very much for that, Paul. So, let's see if modern technology will assist us in starting my, right, nearly there. Yes. So, yeah, what can I say? Luckily in that picture I was actually holding my chin, so you couldn't see that I even have a double chin like Lady Mary Montagu, so well, thanks a lot for that. That was very touching, Paul. I'm really honored to be here, and it is a great pleasure for me to be addressing you, and I would like to thank you for being here. I would like to thank you for being here because this is a very important award, and it is something that is, I think, will change my life and will probably change Jonathan's life. And also, I would like to thank you to be here because I'm the first woman that gets this award, and it is important for women in science to get the recognition they deserve. So, from the bottom of my heart, thanks a lot for being here. And that wasn't the end of my talk, it was just a start. So, I will talk about challenging dogmas. And challenging dogmas is something that I really like to do, and I get myself in these absolutely gigantic messes. But I promise you that it's worth it. It is. One of my mentors, Dennis Alexander, has taught me many, many things. And one of the things that he's taught me is when you have to address something, you better get the definition right. And you better get it right at the very beginning. Because a wrong definition can create more mistakes and misunderstandings than you can imagine. So, this is a definition of dogma that I got off the web, and that I think is actually quite complete. And how it is defined is a dogma is an authoritative principle, belief or statement of ideas or opinion, especially one considered to be absolutely true without proof. Now, this afternoon I would like to take you by the hand to and show you about and show you the dogmas that I have challenged and how things have changed after challenging these dogmas. And I thought that I would do it using some classics of American literature, because I think that these books that I will cite have changed a lot of the people that are in the room. Their lives will have been changed by these books, and certainly the lives of their families. So the first American classic that will lead us into this story that I'm going to tell you is Mr. Brown Can You? And the reason for which I have picked this is, first of all, because there's a cow on the cover, and we're veterinarians here, but also because this book teaches us about learning from what is being done in other fields. And at times, we are here to reinvent the wheel, and we always want to think of a new way to do something when, in fact, a lot of work has been done before. This story is really about vaccination for avian influenza. In year 2000, I was faced and forced to manage the biggest outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza which had occurred ever. And I promise you that avian influenza is a nasty disease. Avian influenza is the most devastating disease there is in the animal kingdom. It is a disease which is capable of killing 100% of the birds it infects within 48 hours, and it causes immense suffering to animals. And we now know that avian influenza is also a disease which can infect people and can have some very serious consequences. So as I said, in 2000, avian influenza swept through the north of Italy and destroyed the poultry industry, caused a lot of farmers and of companies to close down, reorganize themselves, and it actually disrupted the economic system around the poultry industry. And we worked really hard in the forefront. There was no experience on this, on how to manage such a big outbreak in a densely populated area, but we managed to eradicate it. But after we killed 17 million birds, and you can imagine what this means to the public. I mean, destroying people's livelihoods. I mean, the farmers have mortgages to pay. And you just go in there and say, sorry, but we're killing all your birds. So after we did this, because this is what the legislation at the time required us to do, the H7N1 virus was reintroduced in the area. And this is when I was faced with dogma number 1. I was told it is impossible to vaccinate against avian influenza and, number 1, eradicate the infection, number 2, maintain exports. But we tried. We knew that for other animal diseases this had worked, it had been successful. We know that many animal diseases are eradicated through vaccination, or at least controlled through vaccination. And so what we did was we developed what is now known as the DIVA strategy, which is a very simple concept. I mean, we used a virus with the same hemagglutinin, which would guarantee protection, and a different neuraminidase, which would act as a marker. And we eradicated subsequent epidemics of H7. We maintained exports, and above all, now, the DIVA vaccination system, based on this strategy, is included since 2005 in European legislation. And so I think that, as Mr. Brown said, if he can move, we can too. And now, as for other diseases of animals, an appropriate vaccination strategy, we know, will reduce animal suffering and can contribute to eradicating and controlling avian influenza. So the second story I will tell you is taken from another classic, which is I Can Read With My Eyes Shut. And this story is really about what Paul Gibbs just told us. And it is about this absolutely gigantic mess I put myself into. And it's about the sharing of information. We are now in the internet era, we are now in the open access era, and I personally think that when we're talking about public health issues, you can't really keep your information sitting in a drawer, because we need to wait until somebody publishes it. So if we rewind to 2005, H5N1 was all over the news. You might remember there were people in these suits touching ducks with a pole because, you know, they might get infected, which was a bit of an overestimation of the potential, of the infectious potential of a duck. But we, as scientists working with influenza, we didn't really know what was happening. There were a lot of things that we didn't know. This was the first virus that had spilled over into the wild bird population. It was the first virus that had spread to 3 continents. It was infecting people we didn't know. This is the truth. So in January 2006, this virus reached Europe, and it hit, in fact, the developed world in the heart, and that's when things really started to move. And it reached Africa. And Nigeria was the first country that was affected by H5N1. And we were working very much with Nigeria. We had a very good relationship with several African countries. And we were the first European laboratory to receive the H5N1 virus from Nigeria. And at the time, what I was told, because I was getting really frustrated, we could not find one sequence of an H5N1 in GenBank. There was nothing there. Nothing. So we were isolating viruses, we wanted to compare them, and we couldn't. So we couldn't understand anything on the epidemiology, on the pathogenicity of this virus. And so I was told, it is impossible to share genetic data with the wider scientific community in the face of an epidemic because, number one, scientists are too busy. They don't have time to deposit their sequences. Number two, scientists are going to steal the data from each other. That's nice, isn't it? And then, you know, we have to publish because there's the publish or perish, and we have to publish or else God knows what's going to happen. Our lab, as I said, was the first lab to receive the virus from Africa. We knew that this was very important information for the whole scientific community. And as Paul said, we declined the offer to put it in a password-protected database and put the sequence in GenBank. And this sequence was downloaded 1,000 times in 1 week. Right. So this is the mess I put myself into. Want to have some examples? Science came to visit us. I mean, and this doesn't happen very often, that like science sends people to an Italian laboratory. And neither does this happen very often. I actually don't read the Wall Street Journal, but I was going to Paris that morning. It was in March, in mid-March, and it was the only newspaper which I found at the Air France desk. So I picked it up, I opened it, and there was a page, a full page, with this very flattering picture here, as you see. Lady Montagu wouldn't have been happy, right? There was this, like a big page on the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and it went on and on and on. And I have 3 cheers from nature, actually, which are going to go on my tombstone. It was really difficult. I mean, this was something that was bigger than I am. And, you know, me, I'm Italian, so not that I get a lot of support at home. So it was tough. Anyway, we managed, and now we're in a completely different situation because people have understood that this international debate has taken them in a different position to where they were before. As Paul said, this debate was a debate that started off with a lot of criticisms from many colleagues, like she doesn't know what she's going on about, and they just want to show off, and you know, this is never going to work. But it also received a lot of support from the web and from all the people that were involved at various levels with managing this crisis. And so now we are in a different position. We are standing somewhere else because the OIE has actually put out a resolution saying that any reference laboratory that receives samples for avian influenza and characterizes them has to deposit them in a public database within 3 months of receiving them. The WHO also recognized the importance of greater transparency. This is actually something that came out in 2009. So they said, okay, we understand, we need to do something about this. And, oh God, anyway, this is FAO. This is the FAO webpage showing that, right, this doesn't work, showing that the FAO was also very much on the ball, and they were very supportive from the start. And I'm very proud to say that this year, in May, last May, the WHO passed a resolution which they define as a landmark agreement. And just here it says that influenza virus samples will be shared with partners who need them to support public health. And I think that this is something that came from the veterinary world and that has changed the way the game is played at an international level. And so, I think that our American classic here, we are now in a different situation. We don't need to read with our eyes shut. We can read with our eyes open, and we can have many, many people reading that book with their eyes open so that we move forward together in a different way. My third classic is The Cat's Quizzer. Every day we are challenged with quizzes. And is it red? Is it black? Is it yes? Is it no? And often we don't have the answer. And scientists, people think that scientists have a lot of answers that they really don't have. And one of the answers that we don't have is about predicting the next strain that's going to cause the next human pandemic. This story starts at a conference. It was a conference which was held in Verona, in Italy, and it was a conference that we co-organized with the WHO, OIE, and FAO, and it was the first joint technical consultation that was held. It was funded by the three organizations, particularly by CIDA, the Canadian International Development Agency. And during this conference, I was told that it was impossible that the next human pandemic could be caused by an H1 or an H3 virus. Because if you look at what textbooks say, in order to ignite a pandemic, the virus needs to be a new virus. And therefore, since we have immunity to seasonal flu viruses, human viruses, which are the H1 and H3 subtype, it would have been impossible that any other animal virus could have caused a pandemic. But we need, and I challenged this statement, and I said, but this doesn't make sense. And if we look at history, we see that all human pandemics that we know were originated, the virus originated from the animal reservoir, either entirely or partially. They inherited some genes. And they always contained a novel animal component. And at that time, all the research efforts were pointing towards H5 viruses and H7 viruses, when in fact, if you think about it, up to now, human pandemics have been only caused by H1, H2, H3. The viruses that have become established in people have circulated for many years in the human population, and immunity has allowed these viruses to drift away from the original animal progenitor to the point that we need to update our vaccine every year. So if human beings need to use a new vaccine every year because it won't protect against the virus that was circulating the year before, then why on earth should we be protected against an animal virus which is antigenically very, very far away? And so we performed some work, and we came up with data, and this was before the swine flu H1N1 emerged. And we produced this data saying, dear medical community, but there are other viruses that we need to look at which could ignite a pandemic. And this paper was, I finished working on it around the end of 2008. It was submitted to Science, and Science rejected it, saying, okay, you're a vet, like. But I did present it to a closed tripartite meeting, OIE, WHO, and FAO, in February 2009. And as you know, in April 2009, H1N1 emerged. And so I think that now the medical community understands that they have to consider what is happening in the animal reservoir. And this leads me to this new concept and this new approach we need to have for influenza infections, which is in line, of course, with the One Health vision. If these viruses are capable of spreading from the birds, that are their natural reservoir, to people, pigs, birds, horses, dogs, cats, backwards and forwards, it doesn't really make sense that these disciplines are managed like in isolation. Why do people say, no, no, but I only do swine flu, so please don't ask me anything, and I'm not really interested about what's happening in people and what's happening in birds? Because we need to have a greater knowledge and a different perspective, and we need to look at the problem in its entirety, and not only through the keyhole of whatever you're comfortable with or whatever you know. And so this, I hope, will put us in a much better situation next time we will have the cat quizzer. Oops, sorry about that. Oh God, disaster. Let's see if I can recover. Right, so I hope that next time that we will have the cat quizzer, we will be better prepared. I have to say that there is actually a lot going on around one flu. CDC has funded a one flu strategic retreat we had in earlier this year, and we had experts working on influenza from the animal and the medical communities, and the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, has put together a proposal with some money in it, which is good, to be able to develop a risk assessment framework to grade the pandemic potential of influenza viruses. And so I definitely think that at the next Cat's Quizzer, we will be smarter than the cat in the hat. So I do tend to take on like big challenges, and I need to acknowledge that you don't do these things by yourself. You do things of this size with people that help you, and I want to thank them all, at least the most important people that have helped me in this, one by one. Number one is Dennis Alexander. He is an influenza virologist, and he has taught me many things, including a lot of the things I know on influenza, but also to have a critical approach to certain dogmas. I want to thank Bernard Vallat, who was the first awardee of this, the first recipient of this prize, and Juan Lubroth. They have both been very, very supportive with the whole data sharing issue. I need to thank Peter Bogner, is a philanthropist who has taken on the data sharing issue and has actually put together an initiative, which is the Global Initiative on Sharing All Influenza Data. And this initiative, at the moment, it's an open access database that contains the greatest number of influenza sequences. And this is certainly the beginning of a new way forward. And this was done together with Nancy Cox. Nancy is the director of the influenza division of CDC, and she gets it. So she gets the importance of the animal component of influenza infections and of a transdisciplinary approach. Lonnie King is the Dean of Ohio State. He invited me to come at the CDC a couple of summers ago and to spend some time with him and act as a policy advisor. And that's where I developed the one flu concept. And so, of course, my thanks go to him. And Kanta Subarao is a pediatrician working in NIH, and she really pushed me to do this work with H1, H2, H3, and she was very, very supportive of breaking the dogma, challenging the dogma that influenza, a new pandemic, could not be caused by H1. Alberto Ladomeda works at the Commission and was very supportive when we developed the DIVA vaccination strategy, yeah, was very, very instrumental in guiding us through the legislative procedures. And of course, my thanks must go to Paul. I wouldn't be here without him, and so thanks very much for that. My group. I have a fantastic group of people. This is only a small part of the people that work with me. I have about 70 members of staff. A lot of them are on grant money, but I can keep them going. And they are very, very hardworking and determined and are definitely part of a leading group in influenza at the international level. I need to thank my family. This is my husband who is sitting here and my daughter, because it's not easy to put up with a lady who challenges lots of things and is often grumpy because she doesn't get the things right, she doesn't get them the ways she wants, and travels a lot, because I travel a lot and it's difficult for them, but I know they support me, and that's very important for me. Something that comes from the bottom of my heart, the dedication of this award. I would like to dedicate it to Isabel Mingetz Tudela, who was a senior scientific officer in DG Research in Brussels, and she passed away in April this year. What I can say is that if Europe has a strong group of scientists that are competitive in animal health research, particularly in animal virology, it is because Isabel has fought tirelessly for years, trying to find funds wherever she could to develop a critical mass of animal virologists in Europe. This is a great personal loss and a great professional loss for European research in this field, because I think it will be very, very difficult to replace her. So, one thing I can promise you is this, that I will continue to take on challenges. I want to take on challenges. I want to continue to change things, and I want to be able to show the international scientific community that veterinary medicine and a holistic approach can really change things for animal health, for animal well-being, and of course, for public health. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and viva le donne!